Welcome to Veterans Discuss the Burdens of War. It is our hope that this show gives civilians an increased awareness of the sacrifices that our military personnel have made. We also hope that the courage that it takes for these veterans to share their stories will inspire more service members and veterans to speak about their experiences and struggles and to ask for help when they need it. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Mr. Stein Amaral and Mrs. Denise Miller. Mr. Amaral is an Army veteran who served in field artillery from 1992 to 2013. Mrs. Miller is an Air Force veteran who served in security forces from 1998 to 2006. Joining us now is Mr. Stein Amaral. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
So I usually like to start off with just an introduction, a quick introduction about yourself and your military experience. Anything that you could tell the audience just so they get to know you a little bit.
Okay, right. So I was born here in Rhode Island, in Newport. I
Yep.
joined the Army in 1993 and retired in 2013. I served 20 years as a field artilleryman. My career was essentially comprised of 10 years of peacetime Army, followed by 10 years of the Army at war. During my time in garrison, some of the highlights of my career included being a drill sergeant and being a paratrooper, which was exciting, both of those jobs. And
I don't think I knew about the paratrooper part.
Yeah, I did some jumping for a few years.
Oh, wow.
And my time during the Army at war was spent going back and forth overseas, twice to Iraq, between the Sunni Triangle of southern Baghdad and the Kharada Peninsula, and then once to Afghanistan, spending time between Port of Entry, Torkham Gate, and some more time spent in the Kunar and Pesh River valleys.
Wow, that's quite extensive.
Yes, sir.
Experience, yeah.
Myself and thousands of other guys have done it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so a big part of this show is focusing on any burdens that you've carry with you from those experiences. Could you talk about that? Does that word fit for you? Does that make sense, the word burdens?
No, burdens is a term that fits perfectly.
Okay.
Because there are certainly things that I experienced throughout my career that I carry as burdens and that I drag behind myself on a daily basis. They're always there. And I would have to say that over the course of my career, the main burden of war that I carry is having been linked to friends and battle buddies who have lost their lives. Soldiers who were killed in action, or were suicides, or casualties of war in other ways. Friends and battle buddies who were subjected to horrible maimings throughout combat operations, and even accidental training, injuries, and deaths certainly weigh heavily upon my mind to this day, even following my retirement, which is coming up on 6 years.
Okay. And when you say friends, are those friends that you had before you entered the military, or those friends that you developed while you were deployed? Or?
These were friendships that ranged between meeting people in basic training and maintaining relationships throughout my 20-year career. There were also friends and battle buddies that I met who I only knew for 2 years or 3 years, or some even less than that. So it really runs the span, but you really have to, as a service person, just knowing somebody for a brief period of time, they become your brother, they become your sister, they become your comrade in arms. So whether you know someone a long time or a short period of time, bonds form very quickly, particularly in combat environment.
Even more so than it would in a civilian world if you're growing up together? I don't know if you can answer that.
It's comparable
Okay.
to every person you come across as being one of your best childhood friends who, even if you spend time apart from each other, say 5 years go by or 10 years go by, you link up again after that time has gone by, and it's like you never left each other. You were pals the entire time, and you pick up just where you left off. That's how tight the bond is.
Okay.
They're your friends and battle buddies for life.
That sounds really nice, but I guess the downside is if they are killed there or maimed.
Right, that's the downside, and that's the part of that's the underside of serving that translates to being a burden of war. Is at the end of the day, combat operations, training operations, they come down to life or death. And it's not an easy thing when someone you've known for any length of time who served beside you becomes a casualty or becomes horribly wounded or psychologically damaged or something like that. It never leaves you. It's with you for the rest of your life.
So do you feel that every day, that burden? Do you feel it occasionally when you hear about other deaths? How does that manifest itself?
It manifests itself, I can only speak for myself, but
Yeah.
for me, it manifests itself daily. It manifests itself hourly. It manifests itself minute to minute. There are plenty of things out there that can heighten that sense of being burdened. Maybe there's a report on the news or something on social media, or you read something in the newspaper that shows a casualty count or a troop deployment. And that always hits hard to home, hits me hard. And those types of things bring back those memories that I have of losing friends and battle buddies overseas and in garrison as if they happened yesterday or even today. So the memories, they ebb and flow, but generally speaking, they're always on an even keel, fresh in my mind.
They always feel fresh, just about every day, you're saying?
Most of the time
Okay.
they do. You're linked to people very closely, and when you lose them, especially in the service of the nation, it's something that really damages your soul, and it's something that you have to learn to deal with for the rest of your life.
And you mentioned the word deal with. So how do you deal with those memories, those losses?
Well, it's important for me to have friends and family there for me. They can't necessarily, if they haven't been in the service, they can't necessarily relate to a specific story or to the language of the military, but they're there as supporting elements in my life. They're there just to listen. They're there to understand the things that I might be experiencing that day due to a memory or a circumstance or something like that. The VA is very important to me. People like yourself and other friends I've met through the VA are definitely part of my support system. And appearing on this show and appearing at veterans events and having other veterans to speak to is also extremely helpful because the veteran or the VA worker, to me they really get it and they understand. So I can talk to another Army veteran who I've never met before and bring up a horrific time for me, a horrific experience overseas in combat, and they'll understand what it is I'm talking about, and we're able to talk it through and vent to each other and get each other to a good place. And that's what it's all about. It's getting through those times to stable periods where you can sustain.
And this might seem silly, but so how does talking to another veteran help you stabilize or
Another veteran automatically knows what it is that another veteran has gone through, especially if they've just been to basic training, which we all have, or they've been to combat. They know what it is that you're talking about without even knowing the details. They immediately know how to empathize with your experience. They know how to talk you down if you're I like to use the term pinging. So if I'm pinging about an event or a memory, another veteran will definitely assist in getting me back on an even platform again. And that spans across speaking to veterans of all wars. I've spoken to veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and of course the new wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, and now we have Syria going on to a lesser extent. But I could talk to any of them at any given time, even if I just talk to them off the streets as a random, hey, how you doing? I noticed you served in the Vietnam War. I feel confident that that individual would be there for me and listen to what it is I've had to say. And I've had them approach me as well, and I'm always happy to listen to whatever it is their experience is or what they're going through at the moment.
So just random people along the street, they'll be wearing a hat or something, or?
Absolutely, and if I see, especially if I see a World War II or a Korean era veteran, those guys are the legends. Those guys are tough, and they're getting up there, and I always make a point to find out what their experiences were. And even if I don't talk about my experiences with them, it's comforting to hear what they went through. Absolutely.
Oh, well, that's great. So usually I wrap up with any thoughts, suggestions, advice for people who might be struggling in similar ways that you've struggled. So you've mentioned you struggle with memories of people that you've lost.
Yes.
Any advice for others who might be struggling with that?
My message is for other veterans who are suffering is quitting is not an option. You must find a way to keep sustaining yourself and to make it through the toughest of moments and the darkest of places. You have to find a way to continue on. Other veterans can assist those veterans in doing that. I would recommend to a lot of veterans, it's very common to hear things like, hey, here's my phone number, call me if you need help. Come by my house if you're having a bad day. That's a great thing to offer and a great thing to follow through on. But I would definitely recommend taking that a step further. If you're a veteran and you know another veteran and you haven't heard from them in a few days, or your gut instincts tell you something may not be right with another battle buddy that you know, take an extra step and go to them. Make a phone call to them, go to their house, go to where they work, and definitely take the offensive and be the initiator of contact. Don't let time go by and a window of opportunity pass you by to help somebody out who your instincts tell you is probably in need. So I feel that both sorts of people have a responsibility. If someone's having a rough time, they have a responsibility to do what they need to do to maintain themselves and continue on. And for those helping those people, I feel they have a responsibility to go beyond being available and go to the person and initiate contact.
That's great advice. We haven't talked about that on this show before. The second piece, where reaching out, going out to people's houses and saying, hey, I haven't heard from you for a while.
If your instincts tell you I need to contact somebody or I haven't heard from somebody, don't ignore them. Call them immediately, go to them, and make contact. Help them out.
Great. That sounds like very sound advice, and I think that would be very helpful if people could do that.
Good, I hope so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Doc.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Joining us now is Denise Miller. Hi, Denise. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I usually like to just get a background so people get a little bit more information about yourself. So anything that you could tell us about yourself or your military experience that could help?
Okay. My name is Denise Miller. I grew up in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I'm a graduate of Portsmouth High School. I joined the Air Force in 1998. under the Security Forces career field, which is similar to military police.
Great.
I spent a little under 9 years in the Air Force. I had a deployment to Saudi Arabia and also Afghanistan, and I was medically retired in 2006.
Okay, great. And then how did you get into the military? What made you decide to go in?
So my brother had joined the Air Force back, I think it was like 1995 or 96, around there. And he came home on leave one summer, and I was just kind of not sure what I wanted to do. And, you know, I was working a couple of jobs, and he just said, hey, you know what, you should look into the Air Force. It's a great opportunity. You know, you can travel. You have a steady paycheck. Your training's paid for. You get more money towards college, you know, until you can figure out what you wanted to do. So he went with me to a recruiter, and I agreed. It was a great choice, and I would make that choice over again if I had to.
Is that
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yep.
great.
It was definitely a positive experience.
And it was everything that he said it was. You get to
Yes.
travel and everything. Okay.
Yep.
Good. So on this show, a lot of times we'll focus on any burdens that you carry from your experiences, any struggles. So I'm assuming deployment itself can be difficult, and a lot of times we'll focus on any burdens that you carry even after you come home.
So my deployment to Afghanistan was probably, out of all the travels and training that I've done, that deployment in itself was definitely different, and it was hard because you're at a time where, you know, the country's at war. You were there because of 9/11, and you're trying to defend what happened here on, you know, in the States. I went to Afghanistan in September of 2004, and I was there for 6 months. And it was definitely an eye-opener. I wasn't involved in direct combat, but I did a lot of intel support, force protection support, behind the scenes. So, you know, it involved a lot of man hours. I mean, you're working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. You don't have a lot of downtime. You don't really, we didn't have any days off, you know, per se.
That's 12 to 16 hours every day?
Every day, yeah. So, you know, they try to do their best to try to, you know, when you do have downtime, to provide some sort of recreational things. But it's hard because you have to be in your uniform every time that you leave your compound where your dorm room is or your tent was. Because when we first got there, we were in tents, and you know, you're only one shower a day. You know, you only get, you're going to the chow hall where they're serving like rations, you know, until they had the chow hall set up, and you know, we didn't have any kind of. It was basically. It wasn't a built-up base yet, per se, as far as the deployment goes. But you know, anytime you leave your little compound, you had to be in your uniform, and you had to have your weapon with you, and so you're always on alert. So you could be, you know, at the PX trying to stock up on supplies, and you know, there's a mortar coming in, and now you got to take cover. So it's like always one of those things where it's like you're constantly on high alert because you don't know what's going to happen. And then on top of that, you know, you're seeing the guys that are going outside the wire that are, you know, out there bringing the fight to the enemy, and then they're coming back, and, you know, we dealt with a lot of, I was there with the Army. They were the main component of the base, and they lost a lot of people. So you're dealing with, we have, you know, ramp ceremonies where, you know, unfortunately you're sending your brothers and sisters home in a coffin to their family, and seeing that it's hard. I remember specifically, there was one day, like I said, I had done a lot of intel support for my unit, and one of the things that I had to do was go on an air surveillance of the base, and we went up in a helicopter, and we were dropping off some Marines at a FOB that wasn't too far out from where we're at. You know, and you're up there, and you're seeing the country, and you know, of course, it's a combat environment, so, you know, the choppers armed up with, you know, the weapons and everything, and then you've got the Marines on there. You know, we made our drop, and we came back, you know, very uneventful, which is a good thing. But then I think it was like a week later, it wasn't so much the same chopper, but it was the same kind of chopper crashed, and everybody on that helicopter died.
Wow.
And I started thinking to myself, like, I was just in that chopper not too long, like in a similar chopper not too long ago. And, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, you know, and just that thought is in the back of your mind. You just, you know what I mean? It's a constant fear, you know, and then just, like I said, the guys that are coming back, you know, seeing body bags come off the planes, you know, picking up from whatever battle that they were fighting that day, and, you know, if they lost anybody, and like I said, ramp ceremony, sending, you know, flag draped coffins home. I mean, it's a lot. It was a lot. I know we lost a young airman. He had only been in the Air Force, I think it was like maybe 3 years, and it was his first deployment, and he had only been there like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month. And he was a pararescue, and he went out on a mission to save a local child. I forget exactly what the scenario was, but I remember it was a child, and the chopper crashed. It was in the middle of the night, and there was heavy winds that came in, and the chopper crashed into the side of a mountain, and he died. And that was really hard. I mean, that shook, because the Air Force at that time, we weren't a big component. I think maybe there was 100 of us to thousands of the Army. So we were a very small component of the base at the time. So it was hard. It was hard to have that happen to one of your own brothers, you know. And then coming back, you know, after your deployment, you're gone for 6 months. You're on high alert for 6 months, and then you come back to your home station. At that time, I was stationed in Germany, and you're only given 2 weeks of downtime, and then it's right back into your normal day-to-day duties, and you're just expected just to forget, you know, what you were doing. Like, there was no transition.
What you were doing in Afghanistan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's like, it was hard. It was hard to find the balance to relax. You know, prior to my deployment, I was a very active person. I ran every day, 6 days a week. And then coming back, like, I just felt really isolated and just kind of not afraid. I shouldn't say that, but you're not ready just to jump into everything. And I kept telling myself that the best way to overcome all that is to just jump into those, you know, start working out again, you know, going out with your friends again. But there was just something that kept holding me back, and it was hard. It kept bringing me down. And
do you know what that was that kept you isolated?
I just think it was just you're so stressed, and I don't know, maybe I was a little depressed at the time, and you're just, you know, you're so used to being, you know what you're doing. When as soon as you wake up, you know where you have to go. You're going to the chow hall, then you're going to your post, and then you're doing your job. And then you come back, and it's like, what do you do with all this downtime? Do you know what I mean? And you just don't know what to do with yourself. You know, I had a lot of friends deployed at the same time I was, and I remember them saying they had the same kind of feelings too. Like, it's just kind of like trying to figure out your place again and what is normal. And I remember, like we talked about earlier, just you had mentioned that militaries always seems very organized and everything. And when I got back, I just felt very scattered. Like, I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. You know, you had your set routine, and then now all of a sudden you have to go back to your old ways. And it just, I don't know. It was hard. It was a hard transition. And it took me a little while to kind of get back into a routine.
How long would you say it took you?
So when I got back from my deployment, I was actually getting ready to change my duty station from Germany to North Dakota. So I literally had 3 months. I had 2 weeks off from my deployment, and then 3 months after that, I changed duty station. So I moved basically to a new base. So now I have to get all my stuff together. I'll process the base. I have to deal with my household goods being shipped out, and so I go from one stress to the next. So it wasn't until I got to my next base where then I was able to kind of try to figure out, you know, where I belonged. And I remember I was just having a lot of physical ailments, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And then, you know, you're you're going to the doctor trying to figure out, and the doctors would say, you were just deployed for 6 months. You're under a lot of stress, so your body is probably compensating for whatever stress that you were dealing with, and trying to find. But like I said, you're not given that time to recoup. So I would say it's probably took me a good year before I could kind of get back into some sort of normal. But then
You start going out. You said exercising was one thing you used to do. It took you about a year to start exercising.
I would say so. Yeah, it wasn't until I got back to North Dakota actually. So when I got back stateside, I started going back to the gym again and trying to get back into that routine again.
And connecting. The other thing you mentioned was connecting with friends.
Right.
You started doing that as well.
Well, it was hard because I went to North Dakota and I didn't know anybody. Yeah. So now you have to start over again. So I didn't really have a place yet. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of hard. And my husband, we weren't married at the time, but he came to live with me shortly after I got to North Dakota, but I was still new, so I didn't really know anybody. So we had each other, but, it was hard just to try to find your place, and it's our relationship was new at the time, so you're dealing with that, and you're dealing with a new place to be, and you're dealing with a new job, even though I was in the same job that I did, security forces, but you have a different mission, coming to the base that I was at. It wasn't the same that I was doing in Germany, so okay. It was a big switch.
And how many, I don't think you answered this, but how many, so you came home in 2006, how long before you found your place? I think that's the phrase you used.
Well, I think, so like I had mentioned, I ended up getting medically retired in 2006 because I was dealing with a lot of physical ailments from being back from my deployment. And at the time, I didn't know that it was due to my deployment. It was just a lot of physical things going on. And then I had to jump into civilian life and try to reintegrate into that. It wasn't until 2008 where I started seeking help through the VA, just, talking to someone and just talking through all the stressors I had been through, that I was able to start to come back to who I was. So I would say it was I got back from Afghanistan in 2005.
2005, okay.
So 2008 was probably when I really started.
Okay.
And so, I'm still trying, you're ever evolving and you still deal with certain things,
Sure. And do you have any advice for people who might be struggling in a similar way, might feel like wanting to isolate, not wanting to go out, feeling maybe a little depressed?
I think just don't be afraid to ask for help, because I think that was, for me, it was a very vulnerable moment. The military at the time was so set on, you don't complain about your physical health. Like you just don't do it. You just suck it up and you press on. I think it's different now. The environment, from what I hear, I still have a lot of friends that are active duty, and that's a good thing. And I think, if you're feeling different, if there's something that you feel is not right, then just reach out to someone, even if it's a friend, a chaplain, or seeking the VA or the vet center. It's a great resource to try to help you work through whatever issues that you're trying to work through. So.
Sounds like good advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned the chaplain yet, but that's a good resource as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the show today. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember, you are never alone. If you are a service member or veteran in crisis, or are you concerned about one, please call the 24-hour crisis hotline at 1-800-273-TALK and press 1. If you would like to learn ways that you could provide more support to the service members or veterans in your life, please visit the Be There website that is on the screen. That's all that we have for today. Please join us again next month for a new episode of Veterans Discuss the Burdens of War.